Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean Oy. I'm the director of the China program at Stanford University. I also have the pleasure of being at the Stanford Center at Peking University this morning, my morning, to welcome you. We are restarting Stanford's overseas program. And so we've just brought 20 Stanford students here. But today I have the pleasure of also kickstarting the spring quarter seminars for the China program. And today I am very delighted to have with us Professor Da Wei, who's been with us at Stanford since the winter quarter. He's our China policy fellow at APARC. He is also the director of the Center for International Security and Strategy at Tsinghua University, and where he's also professor in the Department of International Relations in the School of Social Sciences. Professor Da's research is one of the leading scholars on China-US relations, US security and foreign policy, published numerous articles both for Chinese government as well as in journals in the United States, US, and other countries. And today, his topic could not be more timely. He is addressing the evolving nature of the international order. And I think that we probably know that, many of you know that we've seen a lot of changes in the way that both the US and China engages with the international system. For example, the US is abstaining from Security Council votes. China has launched global lending banks. And both countries are reacting very differently to global events, including what is happening in Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Gaza, and others. And so that Professor Da's task today will be giving us some insights into why these changes are happening and what they actually mean and how we should perhaps understand them. And so I'm just delighted to have his insights into this very, very important topic. The way we're going to proceed today is that he's going to speak approximately 20 to 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for discussion and then questions. You can enter your questions in the Q&A box in Zoom, and then we will curate the questions and present them to Professor Da during the Q&A session. So with that, I'm not going to take up any more time, and so please welcome Professor Da.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone who is in Beijing, and good evening for those who are from the United States. I'm Da Wei, as Jean introduced. I'm currently a visiting scholar, China policy fellow at the APARC, FSI, Stanford University. And currently I'm in Harvard University for some event here, but it's very glad to join you. And it's really my privilege. And I also want to use this opportunity to say thank you to Jean, to my colleagues at the China program for hosting me for this winter quarter. I really got a lot learned a lot at Stanford. Thank you very much. So today, as Jean said, let me share my screen. Yeah, can you see the screen? Yeah. Yes, yeah, by the way, I could there is a possibility that I could run into some internet connection problem. I don't know. I hope everything is fine, but there is this kind of possibility I could be cut off internet connection maybe in 1 hour. 1 hour later. if that happens, please stay calm. I will be back within 1 minute. Okay, so I will start what I want to present today. The topic is China, US, and the international order. Are we moving towards parallel systems? So of course, this is a very big topic. So what I'm trying to do today is try to explain why we are here. So what are why China and the US gradually depart from the same, international order. So I still remember, I live in Beijing, so I still remember in 2008 when Beijing held the Olympic, we have the slogan 同一个世界，同一个梦想, the same world, the same dream. But now, 15 years later, I think there is some signs that we are moving towards different worlds and different dreams. I don't know if that's true, but this is the question behind me, why we are here and where are we heading to. So I will try to keep my presentation within 30 minutes. Then comments and questions are very welcome. So, okay, the first point, the starting point I would like to start is the different kinds of international orders. So I use two terms. One is realist international order. The other is liberal international order. I think this realist and the liberal, these are the two schools of thought when we're discussing international orders. But of course, I think no international order are purely realist or liberal. It's always kind of mixed. But I think to differentiate these two schools of thought about the international orders will help us to understand why we're here and where are we heading to. So the realist order, I use this term refer to the Westphalian system of the nation state after the 30-year war in Europe, that after 1648, basically this is the starting point of the modern international relation history. So from that time, I think the sovereignty of nation state become kind of paramount thing, and the world emerged from Europe, then gradually spread to the whole world. The system is, we call it Westphalian system. It's a system composed of independent sovereign states, and the sovereignty is the most important thing, and no higher authority agency can intervene, should allowed to intervene the sovereign country's affair. And this is just a kind of realist order, and the value play very, very limited role. So no matter what value, what norm you apply in a sovereignty, inside a sovereignty, no others have no say to your system, to your own business affairs. So non-interference principle. But in past 150 years, I think we also witnessed the emergence of the liberalism in international order. I think gradually, this liberalism, I think first emerged in United Kingdom, and then later, particularly in 20th century, US led this liberalization process. And then, of course, now I think the whole West support and advocate for this liberalism in the international order. So there is a set of values and principles that all countries, sovereign countries, should follow. For example, free trade, free of navigation, a set of international law. I mean, all those things are, need to be accepted and followed by the sovereign states. So sovereign states sometimes just cede their power no matter it's international law or international order or to each other, try to set up the institutions like free trade and the freedom of navigation. So these two orders, they have conflicts, they are different. So I think the key here is sovereignty paramount. Should there be something above the system which is composed of independence and self-help sovereign state? If your answer is no, then probably this is a realist order. But if your answer is yes, then maybe you are for the kind of liberal international order. So this is the first thing I want to discuss. Secondly, after the World War II, I think we actually the U.S. led, but China and other countries also participate this process. We built up, I will say it's a realist order with liberal traits, with liberal characteristics. So basically, the UN system, I think, set up this system of the eco-sovereign states right after the World War II. And it, of course, it emphasized the non-interference principle. But at the same time, why I say it's an order with liberal trait, because it also emphasizes on human rights. It emphasizes on the international global development and, of course, international laws. During the Cold War, I think these liberal traits, liberal characteristics was limited because there are competing ideologies, right? At least led by the Soviet Union and the United States. And sometimes the superpower, because they are so addicted to the power struggle, so sometimes, for example, the Western country or like the United States support authoritarian regimes in the developing world in order to win this power competition during the Cold War. So I will say that this liberal characteristic was limited, but it's true there, like what I mentioned earlier, human rights and other norms. So of course, the United States spearheaded the establishment of this, we call it post-World War II order. While China was also part of that process, China was participated the process of its formation. So this is the history. Then after the World War II, of course, China rose from the ashes of empire, the Chinese empire. And after so-called century of 100 years of humiliation, China want to supported the international order which upholds sovereignty and independence. So we can see that it's being embodied in the so-called 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. I think China really support and like the Westphalian system because it emphasizes on the eco-independent sovereignty. And China, as a country, which were weak and invaded by the imperialist country. So of course it cherished this equality and the independence of the sovereignty. So China, of course, endorsed the UN United Nations framework, partly because, of course, it's the foundation of the post World War II order. At the same time, because China was acknowledged as one of the major power in that system, so we can see China is the one of the 5 permanent member in United Nations. I think China, of course, support this. Once you enter this system or order, China has to incrementally integrate it into an international system. For example, China also gradually accept more and more international laws and norms. After 1949, China become a member of the international system. So what happened after the Cold War? I think that's something very important because the order that I mentioned, after the World War II, was a realist order with liberal characteristic. But after the end of the Cold War, we have seen the rise of a I call it a super liberal global order. So we can see the free trade and the economic liberalization happened, in all the countries, different countries. Globalization being embraced by almost every country. And I think the Western countries start to emphasize human rights and basically believe that human rights is more important than sovereignty. And the Western country, or particularly the Western country, have the responsibility to protect. So this development, I think, has gone beyond the traditional realist international order outlook. That is, the internal affair of a sovereign country can never be intervened. But this super liberal international order advocate that the sovereignty is limited or conditioned. So this liberal value not only dictates the principles that directing the different states, like when we say you have international order, international law, I think international law is, of course, the rules that directing the relationship of interstate relationship, right? The relationship between country to country. And you can say free trade of, freedom of navigation is also norms that directing the relations between countries. But this, super liberal international order not only directing these interstate relations, it also influences the domestic governance within those countries. I mean, here the basic question is, does liberal international order requires its member to be liberal democracy? Can so-called illiberal countries be a member of liberal international order? I think this is the question we in China have, because in the West, China has been labeled as illiberal country. So if that's true, some people say once you enter the liberal international order, you will gradually evolve into a liberal country. But some say if you don't evolve towards that direction, you will lose this qualification to the liberal international order. And all those arguments happened, and I mean have the impact on today's international relations. Then, of course, in that post-Cold War super liberal international order, China engaged a lot, and China really enjoyed that order a lot, to be honest. China, of course, we engaged with and we support the liberal economic order very much. So because China, to utilize this liberal economic order, like we joined the WTO, we signed the free trade agreement with other countries, we lower the tariff, we have the permanent most favorable status with the US and other countries. So those arrangements gave China a good environment, external environment to develop its economy. So China support that part. Even today, if you ask Chinese official or ordinary Chinese, is free trade a good thing? I think most of them will say, yeah, we love free trade. Then if you ask them, is globalization a good thing? I think they have the similar view. So I think Chinese, ordinary Chinese has a much higher support than the ordinary Americans for concepts like free trade. But in that process, embracing the economic liberal order, China, for different reasons, for several reasons, I will say, China failed or chosen not to fully embrace a more liberal market-oriented economic order. China believe we have a socialist market economy, but the Western countries say, this is not a real market economy. I mean, from China's perspective, China think we have already delivered our commitment when we made that when we joined WTO. And also some people think that if we just follow this liberal and market-oriented economy, we will be depend on the Western country and become countries like for instance, like some countries in Latin America fell into the mid-income trap. And also because, after several decades of reform, moving further towards a more liberal market-oriented economic order will become more and more challenging for China. So that's the reason why I said for different reasons, China failed and also chosen not to fully embrace. Well, on the political side, from the very beginning, I will say from 1980s or 1990s, China is really suspicious to the ideological part of the liberal order or the political part of the liberal order. So Chinese government has always had quite strong concern about so-called peaceful evolution, and later now we use the term color revolution. So here the contradiction is, we have seen the war, for example, in former Yugoslavia, in Kosovo, and in other places in Iraq. So we believe that the bright side of the super liberal global order is it can help China's economic growth, but the dark side of it is it could pose some political challenges for China. So these are our very mixed attitude to the global liberal order. And as China become a more powerful country, bigger economy, China think we can do something in the existing international order. Or we can say that it's a liberal international order, but China feels some frustration. China encountered some frustration when China because China think at least its economic size has become bigger. Now China is the second largest economy in the world. So China think we should, and we can make more contribution to this order. So China, tried something. For example, China want the IMF, International Monetary Fund, to have reform to reflect the size of the China's economy. I think that's happened during the Obama administration. I think the United States supported China's requirement, but the U.S. Congress tried to postpone it, tried to block it, and later the share of China's voting in IMF has been increased, but still quite limited. It's about, I think, 5%, from 3 to 5. So it's increasing, but it's very limited, and we think it's not reflecting China's position economically. For instance, China's economic size is about 17% of the whole global GDP. And when China tried to create some new institutions like AIIB, the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, I think the United States government tried to block other countries to join AIIB. But later, of course, a lot of Western countries joined the AIIB, but the US has not. And this gave China an impression that the US really don't want China to even have a bigger say in the existing order. And another thing is, as I said, this liberal values not only directing the interstate relations, it's also directing the internal affairs of a country. Then more and more Chinese are asking, are we allowed to be part of the liberal international order? When we set up something like AIIB, can, even if we follow the norms, the rules of this order, will that be viewed as part of the liberal international order, or it's something just because it's set up by Chinese or by Chinese government, and because of the ideological differences, it won't be admitted as part of the liberal international order. Very interestingly, I still remember about 6 or 7 years ago, I was in Guangzhou, China for a conference, and one scholar American scholar sitting beside me, and he's now in the Biden administration, so I cannot mention his name, but at that time he sit beside me, we discussed this issue, and I asked him, what is a liberal order? What is part of the liberal order? What is not? So I asked him, is Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, part of the international order? He said, no, it's not. Then I said, is ASEAN part of liberal international order? And he thought for a while and then say, maybe not. So if so, I mean, this conversation, I think for me is very interesting. I mean, if the liberal international order, the liberal means a value, a norm, a rule, so it should be, it should allow all the countries, no matter what is your domestic political system, so long as you follow that set of rules and the norms, interstate norms and the rules, you should be allowed to contribute to this order. But another explanation is because you are an illiberal country, so you cannot make any contribution to that. While only in the so-called liberal country, or we can change another term, only the Western country can do that. If so, we believe this is a hegemonic system, hegemonic order. So for instance, another example is, I think at least I think majority people in the US believe that the US-led alliances system is part of international order. NATO is part of international order, for instance. So that from Chinese perspective, it's not fair, because why NATO can be part of the liberal order while ASEAN cannot? So so is liberalism an authentic value, or merely a facade of for power? So this is the question we asked in China. And when China faced those puzzles, those questions, I think the US also experienced many changes. So gradually in past 2 or 3 decades, I think US moved from the Clinton administration's enlargement and engagement to a retreat from the order, international order. So now it's not only China, Russia, or some other countries are challenging, quote unquote, challenging the order. I think the US and particularly the US, but also some other Western countries are retreating from the international order. So many people here in the US, many Americans believe that US is overstretched after the Cold War to maintain the order. The US need to fight a war. US need to support its allies. And also globalization, free trade, this kind of liberal economic norms and the rules has become much less welcomed here in the United States and in other Western countries. It's been seen not fair and not beneficial for ordinary Americans, while countries like China are eating the Americans' lunch. So then, both China and the US, we met something, and China met many frustrations and disappointment. The US also become more suspicion towards that so-called, I call it super liberal international order. So after all this, what are China's aspirations? Of course, I don't know. I don't have a very clear answer to that, but I think we can ask several questions. Is China seeking to establish an entirely or parallel new order? I think this is a question many people are asking. I won't give you a very clear answer, a yes or no answer to that. But I mean, I have further question. If it's true, does China have a blueprint for a new world order? So during the Cold War, I think when Soviet Union want to build a parallel order, it had a very clear blueprint for the new world order. But today, does China has that blueprint? I To be honest, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think China have the blueprint. If so, even if China want to establish a new order, actually, I don't think China want to. But even if China want to, I don't think China can do that. I think China's behavior more or less is kind of, a desire to show China is not happy because those frustration and disappointment we met, and those I mentioned earlier, because that experience China want to show we are unhappy, and particularly China now is quite a strong player in international order. China say many people in China think that we have this capability to show this unhappiness, right? To show China's strength. And also because China has been criticized by the West a lot for all kinds of reasons, from its political system to its economic policy and others. So there is a stronger desire in China that to show that China and its system is successful and even more successful than the West. But even though China have this, desire to show the strength or happiness, desire to show that we are successful, I still believe China is not ready intellectually and psychologically for the role to build a entirely new order and also a parallel system or parallel order. So what is the US vision? This is another question. I think again, this is not clear. This is not clear. From China's perspective, we're asking: is the U.S. aiming to establish a so-called mini liberal international order? That is an order composed of the U.S. and the Western countries, or you can say liberal democracies. So try to maintain this mini liberal order among the Western countries, while at the same time try to manage and contain the chaotic peripheries. I mean, by peripheries, I mean those non-Western countries. Like so long as you can contain China or Russia, and so long as it can manage the chaos in developing world, it will be fine. I think this is one of the vision I heard or I have seen in this country. At the same time, we can also see other versions. For example, maybe some part of the American friends try to prioritize the American first. So it's not a mini liberal international order. It's more or less like the realist order that U.S. as a nation state is a basic unit of this order, and the narrowly defined American interest should be prioritized. And then if the U.S. can be be in a stronger, better position, the U.S. is willing to see a fragmentation of the international order, a more chaotic order outside the United States. I think at least I can see these two type of the visions, and maybe there are more, but we can leave it in the discussion part. So then China say that at least some in China say that We want a competing order for, with the United States or with the West, or some Americans believe China is doing that. At the same time, China is not really ready to do that. I mean, to build a new parallel order. While in the US, there are also competing different vision for international order. So there are different scenarios we may see in the future. In the future, I think at least 3 scenarios. The first scenario is if the US is very successful in building this mini liberal international order, and China is not very successful to build a new international order, then we may see a mini liberal international order. The other scenario is both China and the United States are, I will say, relatively successful. I mean, it's true that US maintained a smaller liberal international order, while at the same time, China, for whatever reason, was pushed towards a direction that successfully set up a new order, a new system, parallel one. Then we will have 2 systems. So then we will have a new Cold War, I will say. So I say this is relatively successful because it's not a real success, right? When we have a new Cold War, how can we say we're successful? But anyway, I mean, at least just very successful setting up a new order. I think by that mean, I say relatively successful. The third scenario is the US failed to maintain the mini liberal international order, while at the same time, I don't think China can really build a parallel or alternative order to the existing one. Then we will see a fragmented system. So that will be, of course, very bad. So I think above 3 orders are, at least from China's perspective, I think none of them is good. From the American perspective, maybe the number 1 is not bad, at least not too bad, but the other 2 maybe I think will be bad. So is there any possibility for a better outcome besides those 3 scenarios? I don't know. Of course, as a scholar, I still want to be optimistic. I don't want to say it's impossible, but I think it's quite hard for us, I mean, for China and the United States to go back to the old post-Cold War international order. I think it's because both countries, both the United States and China, has turned away from the old order and the development approach that order brought in. So I don't know what is the better outcome, or better scenario, but I still hope that we can have one in the future. Okay, with that, I think I should stop. And thank you very much. And the comments and the questions are very welcomed. Thank you.
First, I want to congratulate you. You presented an incredibly clear presentation that lays out, I think, some of the really key and very complex questions. I think we could essentially go on for the entire quarter trying to answer some of them. But you have hit really all of the key major problems. Let me just start out before we open it up for discussion, a couple of questions. And let me start out because a little more on the specific level. On the one hand, you brought up the creation of the AIIB as a key example of where China tried to create a new institution, and there was resistance from the United States. I'm curious to know how you view what has actually happened to the AIIB after, as you say, a number of Western countries signed on. And so that it is now managed in a very, very much sort of an international board. So how would you say, what would you say has been sort of the actual operation? Has this organization essentially become accepted as part of the multilateral international financing system after these number of years? I mean, because this would be like one indication. So yes, there was resistance initially, but after these years, what has happened with AIIB?
I think AIIB runs quite well. I will say, as you said, it has an international board, and also I think it follows the rules that basically Western country also believe it's fine, it's okay. So, but the problem, the challenge for me is, what happened when China tried to set up that institution, sent China a signal that this kind of effort is not welcomed by, at least by the United States. Maybe it's being it's welcomed by UK and other European countries, but the US as a leading power in this international stage, and also a country created and maintained the liberal order, so far, even today, the US is not on board. So so it's not. I think there are some internal, debate say that was a mistake of the Obama administration. But no matter it's correct or wrong, but even today, U.S. is not in that system. So that institution. So that, I mean, this is still an official attitude that the most powerful country in this world, give us the attitude quite clearly. So, but as an organization per se, I will say it. I think it runs quite well, and in the international development area, I think it's. But of course, I won't exaggerate its role. But China is not was not want to set up something to replace, for example, the World Bank. That was not China's intention. I think China want to contribute, to some extent to this system. I think what AIIB is doing is part of the international development effort, and it's great that actually it shows that China is not going to replace World Bank, and is not going to set up something completely different from others. But I mean, yeah, for us, I mean, for China, that signal was bad. Even today, I mean, but of course, it's not very meaningful today. But even today, we have not received any signal that China is allowed, China is welcomed to establish some institution in the system. I think this is the signal, and the signal is still even become, I mean, more serious, I will say.
Well, this is an interesting point, and I guess what I'm wanting to get your sense about is, on the one hand, the U.S. may not have signaled its support, but at the same time, the fact that the AIB really has been working quite well, and as far as I understand, it actually is doing a lot of co-financing with the World Bank, ADB, and other international organizations. And so in that sense, the U.S. has not intervened to block that or to make it more difficult. And so, I mean, it's, yes, I take your point, but at the same time, it is being integrated into the this evolving international order. So which may, I mean, maybe this is one of these things where it takes some time. But the other question I'd like to ask you, and this is a big question, I'm not going to take too long, but you keep using this term, the Cold War. And people have different views on whether this actually is it appropriate to call this a new Cold War, meaning in comparison to the war between, the Cold War, Russia and the Soviet Union and the United States?
I think I only used the new Cold War once, if I'm correct. I mean, I'm hesitant to use the term new Cold War, but I said if we have that, I said in some condition we will have a new Cold War. But anyway, I'm hesitant to use this term because not because I believe that we are not in the Cold War, but because if we use this term, it could lead us to a self-fulfill prophecy, right? I think this is the reason I'm quite reluctant to use this term. The second, having said this above, I mean, I still, if we go to the basic fact, I will say, uh, China and the US we are not in the new Cold War, but we are stepping into the second Cold War. I think that's different. The new Cold War implies that we are having the Cold War again. We will have a Cold War like Soviet Union and the US. That's, of course, that's not true. It's totally different. But in history, we have the First World War and we have the Second World War. If you compare those two world wars, they were completely different from the reason of the war, from the player in the war, from the strategy of the war, and from the outcome of the wars. They are different, but we still call it the First World War and the Second World War, because these are two wars that a lot of country participate joined. So that's the reason we call it First and Second World War. Today's, let me quote with a quote here, the Cold War is completely different from the Soviet US Cold War. Just like the Second World War was completely different from the first one. But there is something in common. The two most powerful countries in the world have kind of strategic competition, or I will say, no matter how you call it, have a very difficult relations and compete for no matter superiority or influence with all the means but wars or military conflicts. So this is the basic commonplace of today's history and the history during the Cold War. So that's really, yeah, sometimes I say this is the second Cold War, but again, I'm quite reluctant to use that term because that will lead the readers, the audience. I mean, so particularly, sometimes I use it in the academic setting for scholars. I think I can say that, but sometimes when I have public audience, I'm quite reluctant to say that because that will become kind of self-fulfill prophecy. Yes.
Here, let me just intervene and ask the question. Yes, the two most powerful countries, but the relationship, the economic relationship between China and the United States is so different than between between the United States and Russia. And you mentioned this yourself when you talked about the two sides of the liberal order. On the one hand, sort of economically, this globalization is something that is seen as a positive in China still. And so this really complicates how the two sides are going to interact. I'm just wondering if you would just push you a bit and to tell us, what do you think is going to happen on that front, given the importance both to the United States and to China, actually, about this economic relationship, this integration that has occurred over the last 40 years?
I think in the future, my hunch is if we do not do anything meaningful, I mean, in next few years, we will gradually slide into more and more series of decoupling. I mean, the precondition is if we do not do anything to stop it. And current trajectory is moving towards that direction. I mean, the decoupling direction. The Biden administration keep on saying small yard and high fence, but the problem is, I mean, the modern economy has become more and more rely on, I will say, rely on data and rely on the connection or internet. Then below these connections and below those data, the basic element below it is trust. Do you trust the other side? Do you trust the other side so I can give my data to the other side? Everything, not only AI or chips are about this or bigger data, or TikTok about this. Let's say the crane in the port now is a focus because it has contained kind of Wi-Fi equipment there. And in the future, we will have the Internet of Things. Everything will be connected. So when I always say, when I drink a can of Coke, maybe in the future, Coca-Cola company could have a chip in the can so they can know whether I like to drink regular Coke or Diet Coke or zero Coke. I mean, then it can become kind of security thing. So everything can be securitized. So if we don't stop it, and to be honest, if after this election, in November, it become even worse. I don't know. But if we are fortunate enough, there is still chance that we can gradually draw a line to stop. I mean, actually, the small yard high fence thing is not bad. I will say, even if it's a big yard high fence, for me it's not too bad. I mean, so long as the fence is stable, so long as the boundary is clear, then we know where can we cooperate, where can we can't cooperate. If we have this idea, then at least we will couple in some area and then we will decouple on some area. But today, this fence, this wall is moving, because the underlying trust is is disappearing. It's disappeared, I will say. So I think the tendency is not good, and let alone if next president of the U.S. impose a 60% of tariff, what that will happen. I think that will be huge, the dramatic thing. But again, I think there's still hope that we can do something through very difficult negotiations, very professional, detailed negotiation to draw a line in sector by sector, industry by industry, where the area that we need to, I mean, the two sides need to protect, and where are the part that we can open to the rest of the world. I think that is possible, but it's not easy at all, I will say.
Definitely. Let me also just ask you, the President Biden and President Xi just had a phone call 2 days ago, and Secretary Yellen is coming this weekend, and I hear that it's also been announced that Secretary Blinken is also coming to China. So what should we take away from all of this? Or do you have any insights onto this conversation? Is this beginning to build this trust that I think is very important?
My expectation is not very high, but I think the two sides, both China side and the US side, I think are seriously stabilizing these bilateral relations. I think this is a good thing. At least we started from last November. Maybe it's late, but it's better than nothing. I mean, in past several months, we are stabilizing these bilateral relations, and this latest phone call and upcoming visits of the senior officials is part of this effort of stabilizing the bilateral relations. But the challenge is we only have, now it's already April, so we only have how many, 7 months for this administration. Even if we are lucky enough, there's nothing bad happened this year. We only have 9 months. We don't know who will be the president next 4 years, and it will bring, if there are some, I mean, if Donald Trump win the election, there will be different policies. So then that means I'm not saying that necessarily be a bad thing, but at least it means it implies the changes of the policy again. So then if so, the current effort of stabilizing the bilateral relations will disappear. So our effort could be in vain. So I don't know. But of course, I welcome those communications. I think that will be good. We can do more, try to shape the environment of the next 4 years. But we'd better keep our expectation low, I think.
Let me now start presenting some of the many questions that have been coming in. And the first one actually is from Tom Finger. And he's sort of echoing a question that I had when you were speaking, because you made the point during your presentation that China has always, and the United States, we have different ideas. And that China, if you mentioned that, Deng Xiaoping starting the reforms, even then they were always very suspicious of this, liberal ideas. And so the question is, and I'll just read what Tom says. He has a much longer comment, but the question that I think that really is key here is, why does China see pressure to modify values in the political system as originating in the United States? Pressure. I'm sorry. So basically, I'm rather sorry, Tom. I won't read your question because it's I think that what you're asking is, why? Because there's always been this difference. So why do we see now much more efforts on the side of China to try to change things, to try to behave differently? Because there's always been this difference. And our relationship, as you know, has changed dramatically over the last number of years. What do you think is the major pressure that's sort of forcing or that's pushing China to make these changes?
You mean politically or economically?
Yeah, so politically, because, as Tom was saying, he was talking about, let me just read this. You said the liberal system as it evolved after World War II was intended to prevent another Great Depression or promote development and prosperity. The Cold War meant that the model could only be applied in the free world, which fostered common values. When China adopted reform and opening, it sought and was granted admission to the US-led free world system without having to adopt values or change political system. Why does China see pressures to modify values and political system as originating in the US pressure, and not as what Marxist theory asserts happens when societies modernize?
I think China, because the liberal values from the West is quite powerful, I will say. And it is true that many people in China advocate for those set of the value. It's popular. And then, of course, the government feel that kind of pressure from, no matter from intellectuals or from the ordinary people. And it's being viewed as kind of threat to these political stability. So then, of course, China feel, yeah, I think it's I don't understand. I think it's quite clear that China has been in this pressure for a very long time. In past several decades, I think China is always under that pressure. I mean, on the one hand, it's not saying China just reject those values, but I mean, how to have maintain the order at the same time, or stability at the same on the one hand, then at the same time gradually modify your own value and norms of the society. I think how to maintain the stability in this process, I think it's quite challenging for China. So Chinese government always believe that kind of modification could lead to the social disorder and disruption. That this is the concerns, I think.
So your answer, just to make sure I understand clearly. So your answer is that as China's own society and economy have evolved, these pressures have grown.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yes, of course, and also because we are globalized and we are engaging with the United States, so those values, of course, influence China greatly. I think that's a fact that from China's perspective, this is Western values, right? No matter you like it or not, it's from the West, so it's not it's different from what China had. Then naturally it will become part of China. Many Chinese will support that, or they advocate for that values. Then the Chinese government, of course, feel kind of pressure. Will you adopt those values? I think that's challenging task.
All right, another question is that you mentioned in your talk, said even if it wants to, China can't really create a new order. But does the current administration in China think that too, or do they or do their thoughts on this shift over time?
I think the current, I'm not part of the government. I cannot say anything for them, but my understanding is, or my feeling, I do have a lot of engagement with the government officials. I think I don't think they have a clear answer to this question. If China, if they believe China can or cannot. Some of them may think China can, but a lot of them don't. They think China cannot. So it's still an issue that under debate. Well, as an observer, I mean, actually, of course, if China can build some order, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. But the problem is, what is the order that you want to set up? What is the right? What kind of how will you deal with I mean that must be alternative order. It's different from the existing one. Then do you have any other? Do we Chinese have a for instance, if you don't like freedom of navigation, do you have any alternative solution to the maritime governance? I don't think we have. And if you don't like human rights, the set of the human rights standard, do you have other alternative explanation to that? I don't think so. I mean, on different issues. So all those orders but saying I want a new order is very easy, but you need a very concrete solutions to different issues, economic issue, ideology, human rights, politics, security. I think you need all those ideas, solutions, and actions. I don't think China is ready to do that. I have not seen any clear vision on even one aspect of the international order. So my understanding is China is not ready, but some people in the government may have different idea, but so far they have not persuaded me that they can do that.
Let me ask a question that comes from Elizabeth Bachman, and this is related. And she says, is the liberal international order fully separate from the realist order? And is China trying to change the status quo back in a more value-free Westphalian direction? I.e., would that be a desired end goal for the PRC government?
I think PRC government does not use the term I use, like realist or liberal order, but I understand this question. This is a very good question. I think it's true that China feel more comfortable in I will say in a more first China feel at least politically China feel secured in the Westphalian nation state system, which means no country will intervene the other country. So politically China like that order. But at the same time, in past 3 decades, I think China enjoyed a lot in the liberal economic order. So China want to continue, right? China, there's no reason China say, this is bad. I want something, no trade, a very high tariff. I don't think China like that. But the problem on the economic side is, first, China want to be in that order, economic order, with the identity of developing country, which is not accepted by the Western countries. And the second is the Western country now feel it's not acceptable for them to continue those old order. So the US is withdrawing from WHO or TPP, all those kind of arrangement. So even if China like it, that old order is collapsing. I mean, the economic part is also collapsing. So yeah, to this question, I think it's not the answer China want to retreat or not. I mean, partly China, politically we feel, yeah, we like it. Economically, we don't like it. But economically, even if we, so long as, even though you don't like it, but you don't want to, you want to maintain stay in the old order. The order itself is collapsing or it's transforming because the Western is retreating from that.
Another part of the question is, does China really need to embark on a concerted order building project for a parallel order to emerge? Or is it enough for China to lead by example, perhaps attracting support away from the current order?
I think actually China has no, because China's goal is quite vision. I don't really, as we said in the earlier question, I don't think China is ready to build that new order. Then even if you want to build that order, I don't think China can lead an effort to bring some country behind China together. So, I mean, I'm not clear if this question is asking about the approach that China build that alternative method, the order. I don't think China is doing that, and I don't think China is really different countries behind it to do it. This is not our approach.
Okay, all right. Let me, we have a question that says that, says on your slide 9, your first point was about the US, quote, aiming to establish mini liberal international order, hoping the peripheral is barely managed and contained. And the question is, does this mirror and resemble the old Chinese traditional imperial system? And if so, would China necessarily object to that?
Interesting question. I think first, China's traditional imperialist tribunal system is not an international order. In the tribunal system, China only want to. It's not international. China only cared about itself. It's not we have some country together like Korea and Japan, Vietnam. This is a mini liberal order, or let's say 小中华, small China. Then other places be managed or contained or maybe managed. That's fine. I think that's different. And another thing is, even if it's similar, let's say, to Chinese traditional thought. It's not in China's interest, because if you want to modernize your economy, if you want to continue your economic growth in the future, probably you don't want to be in that part of the periphery. If you are in that chaotic periphery, even if it's barely be managed and contained, but it's it's not an advanced developed economic area, and also it's not very stable. So it's, of course, it's not a good place for you to further develop your economy. China don't want to be in that periphery. China want to be part of the core, I think. But in that order, the mini liberal international order, China is not in the core. And the US also, maybe for the US it's okay, but because this core is very small, I mean, it's all the members are the developed country, are the Western countries, so it's totally different from the 1990s and the first decade of the century. So it's a global order, right? Different countries were in, and developed country with developing countries. So we have this comparative advantage that all countries can use. But in this mineral one, there's no comparative advantage you can use, because every member are the developed world or Western countries.
Okay, here's going back to sort of this development. A question is, how does the China model of infrastructure-led development fit within the construct of the liberal or realist version of the world order in China's mind? And secondly, if China seeks only to maximize its position in a multipolar world, are there any circumstances under which it would instead feel compelled to pursue a Sinocentric global order?
What is the second is?
So the first question is about the China model, just about infrastructure-led development. Does that fit into the construct of a liberal or a realist world order? Let's answer that first.
The first, I don't think that is China model. Actually, I don't know what is China model. I'm quite suspicious to this term, but anyway, if there is a China model, I don't think that's just about infrastructure led developing model. I think if there is a China model, I will say this is a model that the government play a very strong role in economic development. I think that's part of the international, part of the China model. And if China if China believed that the core, the essence of its economic growth was because the government's role, then probably China will like the realist order, because in the realist order, a government is more powerful and free from any external intervention. So the realist order will be good. But if you are no matter it's an infrastructure-led effort, or China also is a very much international trade-driven economy. So if it's based on this infrastructure building and investment and also international trade, you are like a liberal one, because you can easily have more trade, and you can have more investment on infrastructure, and you can also invest your money into other countries to build their infrastructure. So, and then you can earn money, you can get the economy grow. So if that's model, China model, I will say China like the liberal version of the order. Yeah, this is my answer. But again, I don't know what is China's order, China's model. Yeah.
Yes, that is a tricky term. We have another question here. It says, what does sovereignty mean to Chinese in a world where each decision has such global reverberations and decisions? Is it possible to maintain a Westphalian system in an increasingly interdependent world?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't think a pure Westphalian system is doable today, right? I agree. Having said that, why China emphasize on that? Because China have the history memory, right? China believe that the sovereign, integrity of the territory and the sovereignty, these are extremely important. I think this is a I don't know if it's a China unique phenomenon. Probably not for those countries from the developing world. I think all of us, those the former those who suffer from colonial experience, I think they have the similar memory. They think this is important, and then of course they know that the international order today is not a purely realist one. But when we discuss these values, norms, rules, again, as I discussed in my presentation, I think the problem is these norms, rules, values are basically from the Western countries. So then in that, behind that, maybe there are also power or the superiority in the international or in the international relations. So it's not a pure norms, values issue. It's very, very complicated. Then from a developing country's perspective, that could be dangerous. So that's the reason many of the developing countries are suspicions towards those values. I'm not saying they reject it, but they have some kind of concern and suspicion to it.
We have another question, going back to the question of whether, China is willing or able to take a more active role in creating this new international order. And the question is, in your presentation, you discussed China's current aspirations and mentioned that China is not, quote, intellectually prepared to establish a new order. And the questioner wants to know, could you please elaborate on what you mean by not intellectually prepared?
Yeah, sure. I think what I meant is, I think in our earlier discussion, I think order is not a just something you say this is an order. It needs something can be implemented. Again, like for example, UN is part of the world order we have after the World War II. So UN is not something, it's an institution that designed by intellectuals, or like European Union. This is an institution also created by intellectuals. So you need to think about you need to design the order, you need to design the institutions. This, I think, requires a very sophisticated intellectual activity. I don't think China is ready for that. If you don't want United Nations, do you have any replacement? If you don't like WTO or this worldwide free trade arrangement, do you have any replacement? I mean, do China have, does China have any replacement? I don't think so. That's the reason why I said we are not intellectually ready. It takes time to be a mature, superpower to think about this global leadership thing.
Right. All right. There's we have a number of other interesting questions, but they, I think, all sort of center on some of the variables that might determine which of the alternatives you mentioned on your last slide might be possible. And when you were speaking, I was wondering, what do you think are some of the key variables that would determine which of the alternatives are going to actually be the one that emerges? If we don't have much time, but I thought that would be a good way for you to try to sort of sum up, and I think would answer a lot of the other questions that have come in as well.
Yeah, good. That's great question. Thank you, Jean. I think two things I want to say. First, what is the criteria for a better alternative order? Then, for example, then the mini liberal order, right? I mean, a better alternative than the mini international order is we need a bigger one. We need a maybe a universal one. I hope more countries, maybe all the countries in the world can be included in a unified international order rather than living no matter two camps, parallel system, or in a fragmented world. I think that's not good. So this is one of the criteria for me, which is good. The other thing is I hope it's still can be a combination of realist and the liberalism. I mean, it's still a system that countries, because we will for a very long time we will live in some nation state. So nation state can be at the equal footing, no matter you are a big country or small country. It's not a it's not a rule of jungle. I think that's something. If you have a fragmented rule, then that will be a rule of, we will have this jungle rules, right? That's bad. So
Right. Let me just intervene here and press you a bit more. So the idea, the a much better outcome would be have a larger, in other words, something better than the mini. So you want a full size model here. How do you get that? What's going to be the key variable that's going to determine whether this expands?
I think how can we get there? I think China, US, these two countries, of course, play a key role here. But of course, it's not only China and the US. Other players, like particularly those major players like Europe, like let's say India, plays a role. Japan plays a role. I mean, we need a kind of balance. We need to draw a line. For instance, I asked this question in my presentation: is this liberalism, is that only between the countries, directing the relations between the countries, or it's something well penetrating into the nation state internally? I mean, we need to reach agreement on that. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
here I have to also just interject because there have been a number of questions on this, and I think this might be a good time to bring them in. And that is Russia. How does Russia play into all of this?
Russia is, I think, is a oops.
No, you're fine.
I'm fine.
We're
Okay.
fine.
Something pop up on my laptop, so I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, Russia is at least now. I mean, currently, I think Russian is different from Chinese and other countries. I think Russia is trying to set up a different alternative order. I think it's quite clear. And the Russian themselves say they are creating a new world order. They are trying to dismantle the old order. So if you ask me what role can current Russia government play in building the order that I want, probably I will say no, because they are undermining current order. I think, to be honest.
Including so you're saying including what China wants.
Yeah, of course. China want to reform, maybe make the existing order better. For example, to prevent it from shrinking into a smaller order. We want to still in the same order, but I don't think Russia want that. So, but of course, in the future, maybe Russia, they may change their idea. I don't know. But currently, I think Russia is very clear. They say they are building a new order. I don't think China like that very much, because probably that will be an order that China be dragged into that part. I mean, Russia side. Then how can China, as I said, we benefit from the economic side at least. How can China continue to benefit from that? I doubt. Yeah.
So let me just press you a bit more at the very end here then. So do you think that China can play a bigger role in solving some of the current conflicts that are emerging in various parts of the world, including in Ukraine and in the middle in Israel and Gaza?
I think theoretically China can play a bigger role in the Middle East, and China did play some role. I mean, particularly before the Gaza conflict, like China played a role in the normalization of Iran and Saudi Arabia. I think China, played a role in that. So China is enhancing its role in the Middle East. But now in this conflict, regarding this conflict, I think it's not easy for China now. Our relations with Israel deteriorate a lot. And also, I don't know how can China broke those peace agreement or ceasefire. China is on basically supporting the Palestinian and the Arab world. So not easy to solve. I mean, not easy to play a bridge role. Ukraine, I think it's more difficult than China because China is stuck in this two things. One is U.S.-China confrontation. I mean, so long as China-U.S. relations is very bad, I don't think China can play a role solving the problem or help the two sides, I mean Ukraine and Russia, to achieve something, because China sympathize Russia a lot because of this similar pressure from the West. And the other thing is the China-Russia. China-Russia is kind of, we call it strategic partner. The two countries are not alliances, but they are very close. So if so, how can you, I mean, to sacrifice, let's say, China-Russia relations by being really play a neutral role in this conflicting resolution? I don't think China can do that, though I personally believe that it will be good if China can play that role. But there are so many restraints, from different directions. So if you ask me if China can do that, I don't think China can play a much bigger role. So this is very pessimistic answer, I will say.
Well, our time is up, but I want to thank you because you have really touched on so many of the crucial issues. We don't have answers, and I pushed you, but clearly, you, as you say, there are no clear answers on a lot of these questions. But you raised so many very interesting ideas and summarized so many of the key challenges. So thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing more from you and having a discussion. I want to thank the audience, great questions. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean, and thank you for all the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye. Have a good day.